Yes, I feel like this is a much needed topic, especially in our world today, where many of us are torn with different roles that we have. And so I'm hoping that whether you're a PA or EA or you work, whether you work with anyone else, that you will be able to get something out of today's session, such that you're able to get strategies to take back control of your time. So quickly, this is our agenda for today. I'll tell you a little bit about me and my journey and what qualifies me to talk about this subject. We'll look at a quick survey that I found, and then why is it really important to say no? Then we'll look at a quick no checklist, understanding your beliefs around saying no, and how to get out of the yes trap, understanding your priorities, and 4 powerful scripts that can help you with saying no, and some helpful tips as well. But a quick question before we go on. How many of us here find it difficult to say no? Okay, so I guess it's you're in the right room. And that is something that many of us as women struggle with. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. So about me. So my name is Daytola Amore, and I started my career in management consulting about 21 years ago. I worked also as a business analyst with BSkyBees, Ford Motors, and other companies as a business analyst. But then a few years ago, not actually 10 years ago, I decided to start my own company where I started helping working mothers, working women, learn how to maximize their time so that they can manifest their dreams. And then last year, I started the productivity company as well, also helping corporate organizations to increase their productivity levels, so their leaders and their staff. Now, apart from that, I wear other hats. I'm a writer. I have written 4 books, authored 4 books. I also run a foundation called My Little Warrior Child. I'm a podcaster. I am a wife and a mom of 4. Now, I share all of this to say that, similar to you, I have a busy life. I'm sure that you all have busy lives, not just in your work, but also at home. There's different things pulling you in different directions. And so sometimes you're trying to find that balance. And so today, I want to be able to share strategies to help you find that power to be able to say no when you need to, so that you can say yes to what is important to you. Okay. So I found that this survey that today's PA company did, they do this every year, and this is the recent one that they did in 2022. And I want to know if you agree with this survey. So what they've said is PAs today, the 32% of those that took the survey said that their top challenge was around changes in their roles. So obviously with the pandemic and staff being laid off work, a number of PAs have been asked to take on other roles that are not necessarily their job function. So would anyone say that has happened to them, where you've taken on other roles? Okay. So changes in your roles and responsibility. Another 25% said the challenge they had was around maintaining their work-life balance, such that, because again, and it's interesting, the subject before this one was around hybrid working. Many people are now working from home, and many people are, either going to the office sometimes. But because of, maybe working from home, you find that you're working longer hours, or you find that you are not, your time at work is changing. So how many of you would say that work-life balance is a struggle? Okay. Good, thank you. And then the third challenge that they found was lack of communication with others. Now again, because many of us are working from home now, it's hard to see your colleagues, it's hard to see your boss face to face, and sometimes that communication is different when you don't see your boss face to face. And it can be difficult maintaining effective communication. Again, is anyone finding that their communication has been affected since actually after COVID? Thank you for that. Now, of course, other thing was on there was workload. A lot of PAs are like their workload has increased. Now, one thing that I found common in these major challenges is that there's a direct link between these challenges and us being able to manage our time and even maximizing our time and ourselves. Because if you think about it, when it comes to changes in your roles and responsibility, you might feel that you can't say no to the change. You have to just take on that new role. Or when it comes to maintaining your work-life balance, you might find that because you're saying yes to so many things, there are some things that have been affected in your life. And so I'm hoping that, just knowing what the main challenges are can help us to begin to see where we need to make some changes. Okay. So why is it important for us to say no? Because you might be wondering, okay, yeah, I know I need to say no, but why is it important? Like I said earlier, many of us have been pulled in different directions, work, family, other responsibilities, and it's so hard to know what to say no to. But until we learn to say no to the things that are not serving us, we are going to find that we are stressed and overwhelmed with too much to do in little time. And that's one of the issues my clients tell me that they have. There's so much to do, but there isn't a lot of time. But what tends to suffer at the end of the day will now be our own priorities, time with our families, our health, and things that we love to do apart from work. Now, some of you, or a number of you might have children, or at least we were all children at one point in our lives, right? I have a 4-year-old, and one of the words she loves to say is no. And I'm sure that if you've been around children, many of them are quick to say no, right? No, don't touch that. No, don't do that. No. And why is this? The children at that age are trying to get a definite sense of themselves. They're testing the boundaries, and they're saying, no, I'm not going to do that. I know mommy wants me to do that, but I choose not to. And so that is a way of them discovering themselves. So by saying no, it also gives us a chance to discover who we really are and what we really want to invest our time in. Also, the other reason why it is important to say no is because of our mental health. When we keep saying yes to everything, we find that, like I said, we're stressed out, we're overwhelmed, but then it's like you're in this constant loop. You don't know how to get out of this vicious cycle. And we also need to get to a point where we release ourselves from the burden of pleasing other people and giving ourselves more time to do what matters, to do the things that matter to us. Okay. So thankfully, many of us here, apart from the tech team at the back, we're all women. So would you agree that women generally find it more difficult to say no than men? Let me see some hands in the room. Okay. And there's a reason why. So a lot of research has been done around why do women find it difficult to say no. And I think it's because, based on research and based on, what's happening in our world, it's because of how we've been conditioned by society. We've been conditioned, we were raised up, many girls were raised up to be nurturers and helpers. If you think of your life when you were a child, most girls played with dolls, right? We had the few ones who played with the football, but most girls had a doll that they were taking care of, or they had a little kitchen, and they were looking at mommy, and they wanted to basically emulate what mommy was doing. And so we were raised up to be nurturers and helpers. And that's probably one of the reasons why you decided to become a PA or an EA, to help, right, other people. But what now happens with that is, because we've been raised up to be nurturers and helpers, we find that we want to please other people, and we feel that if we say no, we're going to offend someone else, or we're going to hurt someone else's feelings. And deep down, the reason why we say no is because we are afraid. We're afraid that we would, like I said, hurt other people's feelings. We want to avoid conflict, so it's easier to say yes and then go sort it out by yourself, and you're like, okay, I want to avoid conflict. Also, it could be that we're afraid of confrontation. We don't want to confront anyone with our nose. Also, it could be because we're afraid of being abandoned or rejected. And like I said, many of us have been taught that having other people's approval makes us look good. So if people think, oh, she's such a nice woman, and then it's like you look good in the eyes of every other person, and so you find it hard to say yes. And like I said, society doesn't help. Even the workplace doesn't help. Research has shown that women who say no, there's a risk of them not either getting promoted or receiving a poor performance evaluation, or receiving fewer recommendations for promotions. So the struggle is real, and so you're there thinking, okay, I want to look good. I don't want to be in a position where people are overlooking me or thinking that I'm not a nice person, and so that struggle is there. However, the key is in striking a balance in how we go about saying no. There are ways to say no without offending or without feeling guilty, and we're going to be looking at that shortly. Okay, so I want to do a quick check-in right now. And a number of you have your notes or your phones where you're taking notes. I want you to think about one thing in your life right now that you need to say no to. And just write it down. What is the one thing, and it could be more than one thing. Maybe there are a lot of things you need to say no to right now. So at least one thing you need to say, right? What is that one thing that you need to say no to? Just write it down. And then ask yourself, what is currently stopping me from saying no? What is stopping me from saying no? And I want you to keep this thought in mind as we continue along with our discussion today. For some, it could be you need to say no to hosting, the next dinner in your house, whatever it is. I don't want to prescribe what you're going to write, but just note it down. What do I need to say no to? Okay. Everyone okay? Good. Now, if you don't take anything else away from what I'm going to share today, I want you to pay attention to this no checklist. Because what it is going to do is to help you know when to say no. Now, you can see that my slides, and I don't have lots of bullet points, but what I've done is I've put like a workbook together, and at the end, there's a QR code you can scan to get all of the main content. And also what that workbook it's a say no workbook plan, and so it's going to help you learn how to say no. But for now, let's focus on this. So anytime you find yourself in a situation where you're not sure, should I be saying no, or I don't know what to do, this checklist is going to help you. Now, you must absolutely, and I'm giving you permission, right? Absolutely say no when you're stressed or overwhelmed, when you're already doing too much, or when you're tired or sick. Absolutely, you must say no. Now, except there's something you can remove from your list that is causing you overwhelm, you shouldn't be saying yes to anything new. And don't worry, I'll show you some scripts on how to say no. Because in your mind, you're probably thinking, well, you don't know my boss, you should meet my boss. We'll get there. And then you have a right to say no, and you can choose to exercise this right when it's someone else's issue. When it's something you don't want to do. And we all know those things we really don't want to do. When there's something else you rather do, you have a right to say no. When it takes away from your values, your priorities, and we'll talk about priorities in a while, and your wishes, you have a right to say no. When you think you're being taken for granted, we all have that friend or that colleague that always makes their issue our emergency, right? They come and suddenly it's like, oh, please help me with this. And you're like, I have all these other things I'm trying to do, right? So when you feel like you're being taken for granted, you have a right to say no. And when you need some time for yourself, you have the right to say no. You can choose to exercise that right. Now, sorry about the typo over there. I saw it after I'd sent in my presentation. I was like, So that should be BELEEF, not believe. So what is your current beliefs around saying no? Now, we all have different beliefs about everything in life, right? Everyone has their sets of beliefs. And our beliefs are usually based on our upbringing, or your culture, or religion, or your environment. And most times, our beliefs are so ingrained in us that they subconsciously show up. And sometimes we don't even know that is our actual belief about something. And so what is your belief right now about saying no? What do you think about people who say no? Do you think, ooh, she's nasty, right? What do you think about people who don't say no? Again, these questions are in the workbook you get to download later on. What do you think about people who say yes? Do you think, ooh, she's such a people pleaser? Or do you think, ooh, she can stand up for herself? And what do you think about people who don't say yes? So these are some questions you need to ask yourself around your own beliefs when it comes to saying no. And like I mentioned in the workbook, there are a lot more questions in there that would help you formulate what those beliefs are. Now, what is the yes trap? The yes trap is usually, what the yes trap is about is when we say yes in the immediate to a commitment in the future. So someone comes along and goes, oh, there's this work thing happening in 2 months' time. Would you be able to, sort the room or the meeting room out? And you're like, oh, yes. So you say yes now for a commitment in the future because, like we said, you want to avoid confrontation. You don't want to look like, a bad person. So you say yes in the immediate to a commitment in the future. And so you said all these yeses, and then when when the time gets closer, you're suddenly like, oh my God, has that happened to anyone before, right? I do that too sometimes. I'm like, so you say yes to all this thing. Oh, don't worry, I'll do that. Oh, I'll do that. And then the time comes and you find that you're overwhelmed and there's so much to do. So that really is the yes trap. Because we don't want to hurt other people's feelings. We say yes now, thinking, I'll sort it out later, and then it catches up with you. So how do you get out of the yes trap? It's about asking yourself one question. What is my yes costing me? What is my yes costing me? If I say yes to this, what is it costing me now or in the future? Because the more things you're saying yes to without counting the cost, like I said, you find yourself in that loop of being overwhelmed, being stressed out. So it is key that you begin to understand, first of all, your own values, and we'll talk about that and priorities on the next slide. But it's also about prioritizing your time and also using your calendar, and I'm sure you all do that anyway, making sure that you're using your calendar wisely so that you're not saying yes to everything. Because think about it, today it looks like, you're feeling good in yourself, you feel like you have time, and so you're saying yes, without checking in on your calendar or without checking in with yourself, and then you find that, you've packed in so much for yourself. Now, in order to say no effectively, you need to be in touch with what is important to you, which are your priorities. And what are priorities? They are areas of your lives that are meaningful and important to us. It is much easier to say no when you are clear on your priorities. So if, for example, you have an exam coming up where maybe you want to you want to get a new qualification that will earn you more money and all of that. And so there's this exam coming up on maybe in 2 weeks' time or a month's time. A friend comes along and is like, oh, there's this party. And I don't know why I'm using the word party. I don't feel like we look like people who go partying, but That's the example that has come to my mind. You know, that, or let's say there's a wedding. Yeah, that sounds more like it. There's a wedding, blah, 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 and you don't really know this person, but your friend wants you to be her plus one. But because you already have a plan in place and your priority is to pass your exam, will it be easier to say no? Do you think it will be easier to say no, right? Because you already have a commitment, you already have your set priorities. And so what are some examples of some priorities? Work-life harmony. You want to spend more time with your children or your partner, that could be a priority for you. You want to increase your income. You want to build relationships outside of work. You're caring for a loved one who is ill. You want to buy a house. When you know your priorities, it is so much easier to say no to what isn't serving you and to what isn't in alignment with your goals and your priorities. But when you don't know what your priorities are, it's so easy to say yes and get into the yes trap. And again, in the workbook that you get to download later on, there's some questions that can help you nail down your priorities. Because again, it's possible that there's so many things that need to get done and it's hard to prioritize. But once you're able to take a step back, and sometimes you might need to work with a coach to help you with identifying those priorities. But I'm hoping that the questions in the PDF would be able to help you at least come up with your short-term priority goals. Okay, so now we're going to talk about some scripts that can help you to say no without feeling guilty and without feeling bad. I have 8 scripts in total, but because of time, I'll run through 4, and then you can get the rest in the workbook. So the first one is keep it simple. This is you saying no, like an outright no. Thank you for asking or thinking of me, but I'll pass on this occasion. So you've not necessarily said the word no, but you've said no, right? So that's keep it simple. This one is when you're already doing something else. And that's why it's always good to have your schedule with you, or at least to know ahead what you're doing. So sorry, but I'm already doing this. Or I have a dentist appointment, or I have another meeting. So that way you're not double booking yourself, right? So sorry, I'm already doing fill in the blank. I quite like this one. This is when you need to buy time for yourself, when it's that colleague who's always taking you for granted. They've come along again, asking for your help. They're always coming to ask for your help. Or you need to buy time because you're unsure of how you feel about saying yes, or you need to prepare a response. I'm away from my desk right now. Can I let you know once I have my diary in front of me? Or I'm in the middle of something. Can I get back to you tomorrow? Now, when you use these scripts, please always get back to the person. Don't kind of leave them hanging. That's not a nice thing to do. So definitely get back to them once you've consulted with your diary to say, can I really do this or not? And then lastly, I think this is the one everyone here will probably like, requesting priority with your boss. Now, sometimes it depends on the type of boss you have. If you have a boss that isn't so organized, they might keep dumping stuff on you and keep saying, oh, get this done, get that done, get that done. Now, the reason why I quite like the scripts, so for example, the first one, which one would you like me to focus on first? Or if I do this, what would you like me to stop working on? And I know you might think, ooh, that's going to be hard, but we'll talk about how to kind of do that in a bit. But what this does for you is it helps you train your boss to at least prioritize and get organized in some little way before just dumping stuff at you. Yes, you're a PA, you're an EA, but that doesn't mean you should be disrespected or people just keep dumping stuff at you. So you can always go back and say, and of course with a good attitude, oh, I'm happy to do this, but what would you like me to stop working on? Because maybe they've just given you like 5 other things to do, and then they've brought the 6th thing. So it's always good to ask. And the first few times, you might feel a bit weird or you might feel a bit uncomfortable, but the more you do this, the more you get some practice in and the more confident you'll be. Okay, so Here are some helpful tips when it comes to saying no, or starting this journey of saying no rather than being a yes man or a yes woman. Always tell the truth. There's nothing worse than being caught out in a lie. So there's no point lying to get your way out of saying no. But there's a caveat. This doesn't mean you can't leave out important information. So for example, I know I've done this in the past. Someone wants me to do something, but on my diary, it's me time. I don't have to tell you that it's me time. I'm doing something else, right? So you don't need to give all the information, but at least make sure you're not telling a lie. Now, timing can be everything. No doesn't mean no forever. It could be no, not now. It could be, no, let's talk about it later, or let's see if I can help with this later. But no doesn't have to mean no forever. The key thing is don't feel pressured to say yes. And I know that's one thing I struggle with sometimes. I feel I have to give a yes. No, you don't. You can buy yourself some time by getting back to the person and saying, you know what, let me check my diary and see if I can fit this in. Then stay firm. Now, people who are used to relying on you saying yes will be taken aback when you start saying no and will try to persuade you to change your no to a yes. But you need to stay firm. And this is where being assertive comes in. One thing I learned when I did an assertive training is stick to the script. So have your script and don't say anything more, don't say anything less. So don't add, to your no, because what tends to happen is when you start giving excuses for why you're saying no, the other person can persuade you to change your no to a yes. So stick to, oh, sorry, I'm unavailable. I really can't help you this time. Or I can't right now, or I have other commitments. Now, something just crossed my mind. One other reason why some of us feel that we have to say yes is because we personally also don't like rejection. And so it's almost like you take on other people's emotions and feel, if I say no to them, they'll feel rejected. So let me say yes. But one thing I learned, because I don't like rejection. But one thing the way I've reframed this in my mind is, this person isn't saying no to me, they're saying no to the request. So if you put it that way, if you reframe it in your mind to see that the no isn't to me as a person, but to this request, then it doesn't sting as much. So that way you can also tell yourself, I'm saying no to the request, I'm not saying no to this person. Okay. So there's going to be a lot of practice involved, because if you've been used to saying yes, 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 the first few times you say no, you're going to feel guilt. You'll feel bad, like, oh my gosh, or you might say no and then go back and change it to yes. You have to resist the urge. And the feeling you feel, that uncomfortable feeling you feel, just shows it is a sign of growth. It shows that you are actually growing and that you're making positive change for yourself. And of course, evaluate each situation. As most things in life, no one size fits all answers. Everything depends on the situation, the person involved, your history or relationship with that person, the people affected, and what's going on in your life. So this is where the no checklist comes in, remember? So if, like I said, you're already stressed, you shouldn't be saying yes. But if you have some time and you're like, you know what, I could actually do this, then of course. So it's not like suddenly you're on a mission to just keep saying no to everything, no. Weigh the situation and what's going on in your life. Also, take baby steps. If in the past you've always been a yes person, don't suddenly go all the way to the left or right, and just say no to everything. No. Start with the small things and then take it up a notch. Okay, so practice, take your time, say no to little things, and then face the bigger ones with time, as time goes on. Soften the blow. if you want to go all out, remember that others may find it, shocking that, ooh, she's never said no to me before. So say it with a nice attitude. Don't go all gangster on them or with a nasty attitude. Still be gracious with your no, but be firm. Be firm, but gentle. Then you want to visualize yourself being someone who's comfortable with saying no. And you might need to role play with someone else, especially if maybe you have a difficult boss who doesn't take no for an answer. You might want to role play with a friend or a colleague that you trust, and then begin to see yourself someone who is comfortable saying the word no out of their mouth. And lastly, when no is the right answer for you, say it pleasantly, be assertive, and with conviction. And the more you do this, the more you find you are more confident when it comes to saying no. So this is the QR code I was talking about to get the, hopefully it should work. I tested it before I came, where you can get the Say No workbook plan. And what I've done with that workbook is added in some questions in there to help you reflect on some of the things we've discussed today. So all you need to just do is put in your email. Don't worry, I will not be spamming you or anything like that. But again, just to know that you've gotten the workbook, and if you wanted to get in touch with me. So we talked about 4 scripts today, but there's 4 extra more scripts in there that you can use, and I think you will like them once you see them. So that's me done. I know we went through that really quickly, but I hope you've been able to gain something from that. Saying no is a skill, and the more you practice, the better you become at it. This is the same QR code, if you didn't catch it before. If anyone had any, we still have a few more minutes, so if anyone had any questions, maybe they wanted to talk about a particular scenario where they've been struggling with saying no, please feel free to ask. And remember the question I asked you before, what is that one thing you're struggling to, that you need to say no to? When you get the workbook, use that as your first experiment on how to say no. So when you come up with your plan, it should be one of the first things you go, once we're done here, to go on and actually say no to. And it will be good to hear your say no stories. So any questions from anyone? Okay. I will be at the network bar if anyone wanted to talk to me in more detail. But thank you so much for listening. I hope you found that useful.